We're going to switch gears now into today's hot topic, and we have a very special guest in the building, and I feel like she's probably the perfect person to have not just this conversation, but the conversation we're about to have. And if you're wondering who our guest is, if you haven't been to our social media handles yet, at SpiceFM KE on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, I'm gonna clue you in. I'm gonna get you up to speed. So we're gonna be discussing toxic motherhood. Yes, you see how the conversation just flowed nicely, yeah?
I'm like shauri you guys, mothers. Hey,
Yeah, we've been attacking a lot of deadbeat fathers.
Yeah.
shauri you.
I was gonna
So
say
let's talk about toxic mothers.
it's about time.
I know, right?
Us
I'm
men have been feeling a
excited.
bit attacked, so we're gonna balance out the playing
This is
field a little
adults in
bit.
the room. You know, we always have to balance it out.
Yes, most definitely. So we have a very special guest. She goes by the name of Joan Mwangi. She is a master life coach, and she focuses specifically on healing the inner child. But today we're going to be talking about toxic motherhood. So welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I saw you got
Glad
here,
to be here.
nice and early.
Yeah, she's such a nice guest.
I know.
It's always a blessing to see a guest before time.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm
Always
honored.
is.
I'm honored.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
Thank
Now, I
you.
was having a debate with my producer in terms of the pronunciation of your first name because
Oh yeah,
having
not Joan.
yeah,
She's
you,
like,
you
she's
see.
like, it's Joan Mwangi. I'm like, no, it's Joan. This is Kenyan. I'm Kenyan.
Yes, yes.
very
So
Kenyan.
I was saying to her, I grew up in Australia,
Yeah.
so in Australia we would say Joan, but then here it's obviously Joanne. So I
We
have to
massacred English in
Yeah.
Kenya.
Yes. Do you find it
All
weird
letters,
to say
all letters
Joanne?
have to be pronounced.
right,
Do
yeah.
you find it weird to say Joanne?
Yeah, in terms of how your first name is spelled,
Yeah.
I find it weird saying Joanne. But I will go with you know when they say when in Rome.
I
Yes.
charge.
Right.
Every time you mispronounce my name, I
Hey,
charge.
okay, all right. Let me now that there's money on the table, let me get my head straight. But thank you so much for being here, and we're really excited to have this conversation because it is something that is vitally important.
Yeah.
We speak a lot about relationships and adult issues on the adults in the room. So this is pretty much just an extension of that conversation. So thank you so much for coming and being willing to have this conversation with us. So I guess to kick things off, for those that don't know you, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. My name is Joan Mwangi. I am Kenyan first. More importantly, I'm a human being.
Right.
An evolving human being. Without all my titles,
Right.
I am a human being. So what I know for a fact today might change tomorrow because the world changes every day.
Yes.
In terms of titles, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am a mom to a 27-year-old lady.
You look good for mom.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yes,
27.
27.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
I'm a mother of an adult child.
Yes.
Love
Yes.
So I feel like you're the perfect person to be having this conversation with them.
I'm an auntie to nieces and nephews. I'm a cousin, and I'm just a human being who is learning every day.
Right.
Yes.
So I guess how we were introduced to you was in terms of what you do professionally.
Yes.
So I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you do, and for those that are tuned in, if you could shed some light on what you do, because I know you have a very specific title, which is
Yes.
a master life coach, but you focus specifically on healing the inner child.
Yes, so I am a certified master life coach, and what that means is I'm certified in different areas of life coaching.
Wow.
But when you life coach, a lot of times it's good to choose a niche, something you're good at. And so for me, I chose the niche of healing the inner child, just because for me, I grew up in an environment where there was so much trauma, not necessarily from my family. It was the education system, it was the church, it was society in general. And a lot of the things that we experience as human beings that are traumatic sometimes are not called trauma. They're just
see.
normalized,
Right.
right?
Like that is the cycle of life.
Yes, this is how we do life, right? So as a mom of a child who I raised in the US, they are vocal. There are things that they talk about that are not normal to us here.
Yeah.
And therefore, I had to start checking myself.
I see.
And then started therapy, and these things started coming up. And so that's how I got into this, I decided if I had such trauma I had to address, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. That's how I got there.
Yeah. So I know you focused a lot of your professional work on healing the inner child. So I guess my question to you, particularly because you started the conversation off by saying, in being a certified master life coach, you have the opportunity to sort of focus on a particular niche. What made you want to focus specifically on coaching adults as opposed to, let's say, coaching children or any other space within the life coaching space?
In my experience, any time, and I have solidified my thought process on this based on the people I've coached. Anytime a person comes to me and says, I'm having issues with my child, 99.99% of the time, you are the problem as the adult.
Right. It's like,
because children are literally a mirror of us.
right.
So either your triggers are making you show up as a toxic parent, as we may call them, or you have no emotional intelligence, or whatever the case may be. Chances are the problem is you and how you're showing up as a parent, and therefore your child is reacting to you, not responding to you, because there's a difference.
Right.
There's a
We
difference between
respond
and react.
and react. A lot of us are reactive, not responsive.
Right. I see.
So regardless of how old the child is,
Yes.
you're the parent.
Yes.
It's your problem. It's you as the issue.
No.
Okay.
Because a lot of times adults also acquire behaviors along the way from friends, from wherever. And then we blame other people for it because we don't want to take personal responsibility.
Thank you. I was saying that before the link, that we need to be responsible for our own actions.
Yeah.
And never say it's the world or it's a parent.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to a toxic mother or a toxic parent, what makes this particular mother toxic?
So for me, I'm just going to put it out there. I absolutely hate labeling people.
Okay.
Absolutely hate it. The whole toxic person, narcissistic person. I do not like using those terms. However, they are the terms that we're using now today in this day and age. For me, a toxic mother it depends. What you might call a toxic mother is not what I call a toxic mother. But I look at toxicity from a perspective of the kind of harm a person is causing on another person.
Right.
So if it's a mother, are you consistently causing harm to your children based on the way you're showing up?
I see.
Are you abusive verbally? Are you abusive physically? Are you abusive emotionally?
Yeah.
Are you that mother when your child does something wrong, you respond with silence treatment?
I see.
That is toxic because there's no conversation and you're not teaching this child how to be a human.
Right.
Children learn how to be a human from us as adults.
Yeah.
And if your behavior at home is consistently harmful, then I would call that toxic parenting.
I see. Okay. Well, I want us to get more into this in just a second. We do have to take another quick break. But as soon as we get back, I'd love to really now sink our teeth into this conversation because it is something that many people need to hear, particularly those who are maybe soon to be parents or who are already parents.
Yes.
There's always room for improvement. Something that I always say is humans, like sort of like what you said, we are vessels of evolvement. There's always opportunities to change. So the way that we were previously doesn't have to be the way that we are now or in the future. So we're going to really get into this conversation. If you are just listening, we are the adults in the room. We have a very, very special guest in the building, and she said that if I mispronounce her name, she's going to start charging me. So I'm going to make sure I get it right.
And he doesn't like paying.
Collect your money.
So we have Joan Mwangi in the building, who is a master life coach, and she's here to talk to us about toxic motherhood. So if you are a parent, get comfortable because we have an amazing show lined up for you. Do not go anywhere. We are the adults in the room. We have a very special guest in the building who goes by the name of Joan Mwangi, who is a master life coach, and she's here to talk to us about toxic motherhood, a very important conversation for us to have right here with the adults in the room, listening to us on SpiceFM. So to continue the conversation, I think there's a very interesting balance between, let's say, disciplining a child and being toxic. How do you strike a balance there? And is like how do you sort of find that happy ground where you're disciplining appropriately, but you're also not instilling any kind of trauma on your
I like
your
the using
child?
happy ground.
Yeah,
You're one
you
of
know,
those people who don't look like you'll discipline your child.
no, me, I will, but I don't see myself being the kind of parent who would physically discipline my child. And the reason, even though I grew up raised by a very African mother,
Yeah.
who definitely definitely did
beat
that.
you.
Yeah, and I was cheeky. I was a very cheeky child.
Yeah.
So in her mind, she kind of had to, and in
Yeah.
her mind, it kind of set me on the straight and narrow. But how do you strike that balance between still parenting, but not instilling or inducing trauma onto your child?
So, the word discipline, first of all, means so many different things to different people, right? For me, I don't associate it with. I like to refer to it as correction,
Okay.
not discipline.
Wow.
Because discipline, when you think about it, we have used that word to justify violence on children.
Right.
And we typically, as adults, parents, mothers especially, and because we're talking about mothers, let's just go there. Mothers spend the most time with their children
Yeah.
Right.
in most places, right? And therefore, if you are the mom at home with a child and the child does something wrong, for me, and this is a personal opinion, the onus is on me as a mother to correct that child and to correct that child in a loving, kind way.
Right. Right.
That, for me, that is how you discipline a child without instilling trauma or without imposing any kind of trauma. Now, society as a whole has different ways of disciplining, different ways of correcting. My perception of the whole thing is, if I don't want it for myself as an adult, I should not want it for my child.
I see.
I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I make mistakes every day. Today, I might make a mistake with what I say here.
Right.
Yeah.
None of you is going to come and slap me and be like, you made a mistake.
Right.
You're going to come and say, Joanne, you said this is not right. This is the right thing. However, when a child makes a mistake, the first instinct for most of us is violence. And we don't even call it violence.
They call it
We
discipline.
call it discipline.
Yeah.
Discipline that child.
Yeah.
You don't discipline that child.
Yeah.
Right. And when you look at discipline, like for me, when I look at discipline, I look at it from a perspective of sports.
Okay.
A sports person is disciplined. They'll wake up in the morning, go run, go work out, go do whatever. Wow. For us today, you guys have to be disciplined to be at work at 7.
Yeah.
Nobody is whooping your behind to make you come here.
Right. Yeah.
So why do we have to use violence to change the behavior of a child?
Right. But then I guess some people might argue that children maybe don't have, let's say, enough cognitive development to be able to understand the concept of what it means to be disciplined and to do the right thing. So is there any justification then, given the fact that we can look at children and say a child doesn't necessarily always know the difference between right and wrong in certain situations?
So you said you were whooped because you were cheeky.
Yeah.
I was whooped in school because the teacher just didn't like whatever. There's no conversation happening. It's just you did something. Nobody's having any conversation. You're just being unleashed on violence.
Right.
How does that change the behavior? For me, just processing all that and even just looking at my own life, a lot of that violence that was instilled in me created issues. It created issues that I'm now having to deal with as an adult.
Right.
From not being able to speak up my mind to not being able to self-abandoning on a daily basis because of somebody in authority is going to use violence, whether it's verbal violence or physical violence.
Right.
So that discomfort of just saying, you know what, that was not right. It just doesn't exist. It's something that I've had to learn because of therapy or whatever, just to process why is it that if a boss yells at me in the office, I'm not able to speak up for myself.
Yeah.
Right.
What are your thoughts on correction? You've talked about, when we talk about discipline in our African setting, we think about something else. So what is your version of correction, or what would you advise someone to look as correction when it comes to children? Because I am asking this one, I have an 8-year-old and I'm also a parent representative in my daughter's school. Now there are moments I see that certain parents really have not cheeky, I don't even know where to call stubborn. Their children are just hard-headed. Like even their own mother is like, you can see what to do.
Yeah.
And this boy, they've tried, because my daughter's school, they don't believe in punishing or beating their children.
Yeah.
So they believe in that talking, time out. Okay, I don't believe in it, but I have to subscribe. The African in me, I am unlearning. So I'm being very honest, and I'm hoping the
and
principal.
that's fine.
Yes,
And
because that's the
fine.
system of the school.
Yeah.
But I see certain parents struggling with the boys or young boys who need structure.
Yeah.
So what would you be your version of correction when it comes to this?
And see, the challenge with parenting is it's not a one size fits all.
There, that's true.
It's never a one size fits all. So if your child is defiant, why are we looking at why that child is defiant?
I remember you said it goes back to me as the parent.
Yes.
So is it okay? And I do agree. We play a role. That one I don't refuse.
Yeah.
I do agree. But now how do I sort it out when it comes to correction?
It just really depends. I think it's very situational, and maybe I can use like a boy who is
Yes.
defiant. Is he witnessing violence at home, which is why he's defiant? Was he from a very young age allowed to do anything and everything, and then now all of a sudden he's in school and his behavior is problematic?
Because he needs to be structured, and he's used to
Exactly.
being wild or free.
Exactly. So it just really, really depends on each child. And unfortunately, the world is structured in a way that each child cannot have their own personal needs met in a place like school.
That's true. So would we say that not majority, or part of the behaviors our children are having could be because when they were growing up or in their formative years, we let them grow like weeds? Yeah, just let them grow. Then we
Just
reach.
let them be. We are permissive.
Yeah, we have become permissive parents. The types of parenting styles I was talking about the previous hour. And now when you want to put structure, it becomes very difficult. And hence we have the problem we might be facing with some teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way I look at it also is like, let's say, like, for example, if you're an adult in a relationship, romantic relationship, and when you're dating, you've allowed certain behavior from your partner that is not acceptable to you. Like every time that this person does something, you have a physical reaction to it, but you've allowed it.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, 5-10 years down the line, you're like, I don't like this, don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll be met with resistance. True. You've allowed me to do, like, why is this a problem now?
Yeah.
10 years
Who
later.
are you talking to? What is
Like,
happening?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same with kids.
Yeah.
If you don't start structuring them from when they are little, at 12 or 13, how are you changing the behavior?
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Then I would definitely, okay, and I really need to ask this question because I know there's every Christian parent or non-Christian parent who's grown up
Ephesians
with
something.
Proverbs 13:24. Spare the rod, spoil the child.
What does it say after that?
Yeah, okay, now.
People never read the last verse.
You know, then where do we leave this person who believes in spare the rod, spare the rod, spoil the child? But please, after the break.
Yes, yes. We're definitely going to answer that question as soon as we get back from this short break. And this is really where the conversation starts to get interesting because we're going to learn a little bit about, maybe we've had some misconceptions about this saying, and there's a lot more that we can learn. So do not go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We got some more music, particularly by Celine Dion, to keep you company while we are on this break. We are the adults in the room. The adults in the room. Today we are discussing toxic motherhood, and we're not just giving you our insights and our experience. We actually have a guest in the building who's here to shed some light on exactly what toxic motherhood is and how we can hopefully not only be able to heal ourselves but also raise children who can grow up to be role model citizens and contribute to society. We have our guest. Her name is Joan
Mwangi.
Mwangi.
That's $1.
In the in the building to talk to us about this. Now, before we went on that break, Rigo, you had a question for our guest. Please
Yes.
repeat it for those who have just joined.
So I asked Joanne, so then, what about the verse that we've all been raised, even those that are non-Christians know it, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah.
And, it still completes, which says, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them.
Yeah.
And then the word discipline comes back again.
Yes.
So could we kindly clarify for the parent
Yeah.
to understand what discipline is properly defined by
Yeah.
in this context? Because people, when they hear this verse, they're like, oh, it means beating them.
It is written.
Yeah.
It is written you should beat them. Beat them and beat them mercilessly.
Yeah.
So that, yes.
Lord.
Because if you spare them, you're spoiling them.
But don't do that.
And I go back to the word discipline. What
Yeah.
does discipline say? And that verse, the backside of it talks about loving your child,
Yes, it does.
which is combined with discipline.
Yeah.
And the rod, to me, again, I think we misuse the Bible. We interpret it the way we want to, and then run with it, and just decide, because the Bible has violence, we are just going to be violent.
We're choosing violence.
Violence.
But remember, all this violence is in the First Testament,
Right. Yes.
For those who are Christians.
Yes.
Jesus came with one law,
Yeah.
and it's love.
Mm.
And that love is there.
Love thy
Yeah.
neighbor as you love yourself.
So if you love yourself, your child is not your neighbor, but your child is a person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you do not want the kind of violence you unleash on your child to be unleashed on you, why are you unleashing it on them?
I see.
It's just that simple for me.
Let me say something, Joanne.
Please do.
Now that we are talking about disciplining kids,
Yes.
during Mother's Day in Kenya and African countries, on Twitter and social media, because I come from the world of KOT,
Okay.
people run hashtags African mother. What it is to have been raised by an African mother. Is
With
the
a
concept
symbol of a slipper.
is the concept of an African mother a toxic woman?
I think we've made it a toxic woman.
And why?
I think, so the toxic mother for me, the way I look at it, is a woman who does not have resources to be an effective mother, to be a kind, loving human being.
Yeah.
And I look at it, I'm from the Kikuyu tribe, obviously, because of my name.
Yeah.
And my great-grandmother used to tell us stories, and my mother is a firstborn of firstborns, right? And I'm a firstborn of firstborns. So my mother's grandmother lived to be approximately 117.
Wow.
And she was lucid, and she told us stories. And more importantly, she told my mother stories, and my mother tells us these stories, right?
Yeah.
In the Agikoyo culture, women supported, there was no time when a woman had a child and she had to figure out how to raise this child by herself. There was a village.
Yes.
Right? And therefore, now after colonialism and modernization and industrialization and capitalism and all these things that have come into our society, a woman is having a child, does not have support, does not have help. Capitalism has imposed on women this thing whereby at 6 weeks you're supposed to go back to work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
No maternity leave.
Yes.
You're leaving your child with a stranger. How are you going to be a loving, effective person? How?
After 2 months of
After
delivery.
2 months of delivery. Your body hasn't even had the time to heal and rejuvenate. Then there's education as well. Because, there's education that came along with this Western education, right? There's birth, what is it called? Birth control.
Yes.
Family planning and
Contraceptives.
all that.
A
Yeah.
woman who has 9 children back to back How the heck is she supposed to be
Yeah.
a loving mother if she has 5 toddlers at the same time?
And maybe
Right.
she's single because
And-
her husband passed away.
or even if she's not single, the man leaves the house in the morning and goes and comes back and
To
sits
fend,
there,
yeah.
waits for he waits to be fed,
Oh my God.
waits to be catered to.
Yes.
So it is a toxic mom is a product of the environment we are living in.
Wow.
I see. Now, I know you mentioned earlier that you raised your daughter outside of the country.
Yeah.
From your experiences, particularly because this is something that you work so closely with, how has what you've seen, let's say in the US, in terms of parenting, how does that compare to what you see here, particularly when it comes to what we might consider, what we might call toxic motherhood?
I think it's pretty much the same. It's just the environment is different.
Right.
Because if you're a violent person, if you have no emotional intelligence and your default setting is violence,
Right.
it doesn't matter which part of the world you're from. It will just be violence. If you're verbally abusive, you will be verbally abusive regardless of where you are. And I think a lot of us do what was done to us,
And that's that.
basically.
Wow.
And a lot of us also, and I'll speak as a mom, I, for many, many years, said, I don't want to be like my mom. Forgetting that there are things about my mom that are super awesome, right? But we tend to concentrate on the things that were not pleasurable to us,
Right.
that were unkind to us, without considering what circumstances was this mother in that forced her to be who she was. It could be as simple as she didn't know better.
Yes.
Right.
It could be she was in an abusive relationship. It could be her spouse died and she was left with 5 kids and she had to figure out what to do.
Right.
And there was no support. It could be it could be the thing that most of us don't even consider. You could be a child of rape. How is that woman going to love and nurture you the way you need to be nurtured? Her behaviors are going to be quote unquote toxic because of the circumstances.
Joan,
Yeah.
when we go on this break, when we come back, I want us to just think deep about this.
Yeah.
For me, I feel that there are people who are not meant to be mothers. Or there are people who also are mothers, but they do not want to continue with motherhood.
Absolutely.
And I want us to have that conversation because society tends to plug them all as toxic mothers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very
I
interesting
love
question.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yes, we most definitely will. If you are just joining us, we are the adults in the room. The conversation we're having for today is toxic motherhood, and we have a very special guest, Joan Mwangi, in the building, who is a certified master life coach, and she's shedding some light on exactly what the process can look like if you are raising a child, particularly if you are a mother, if you are a woman. Some of the things to keep in mind to avoid being labeled as a toxic mother. So if you are just joining us, get comfortable because we still have more of the show to go on. And of course, as soon as we hit 9 p.m., we're going to be opening up our phone lines, which is your opportunity to give us a call and, share your insights, share your thought. If you have a question for our guest, that is your opportunity to shine. So do not go anywhere. We shall be right back. We are the adults in the room. Special guest in the building. We have Joan Mwangi in the building who's here to talk to us about toxic motherhood. And before we went on the break, Barbara, you spiked a very interesting conversation that I would love for us to get into. So for those that have just joined, please repeat your question.
Yes, since we're talking about toxic mothers, toxic motherhood, there's a very bad notion in our society and they've pegged it into toxic mothers and women. There are women, if we can be very honest, they were not meant to be mothers. For one reason or the other, they found themselves pregnant and they're like, this is just not for me. And it's very normal for that. However, people in society and their families find that very uncomfortable to comprehend. And then we have those women who maybe they've had just one child and they're very comfortable in that situation. But still, the society does not understand why you cannot add more. And a lot of words and jabs are thrown onto them. And sometimes even they're considered toxic women because you do not want to multiply the nation.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, I get
By
that
the
a lot.
way.
Because the
Yeah.
Bible said, go out and multiply.
Yes.
Right.
I have one child and every other time I meet people,
But then
When are
that's
you getting
true.
another one? I'm wondering, are you helping me pay school fees?
Right.
You're asking so many questions in my life.
Yeah.
You don't know if I'm struggling with that one child.
Yeah.
But society expects me. In fact, the recent one, someone asked me, hey, Chick, you're going to fourth floor and you still have one child. You need to do something. And then I'm wondering, what does my fourth floor and my uterus got to do
Yeah.
with
How
you?
are they aligned? Yeah.
I think we have created a world where it's not safe for women to speak their truth about mothering. Because you can want children and you can have a child. Prime example, I have one child. And I knew from the labor process of having my child that it was never happening again.
Right.
It did not matter who I told myself, unless Jesus Christ comes himself and tells me,
You need
and
to
even
have a
if he
child.
comes, it's going to be like
a serious
I am Team
conversation.
Joan. I am
Yeah.
Team Joan by this.
it is never happening again.
Right.
Because my child was first of all, I had a hard labor.
Right.
Then that child was colicky for 3 months straight.
Wow.
Day
That's
and
a
night.
long time. That's a long time.
And then you're telling me to go and do this again
Yeah.
with no guarantee that this is not repeating itself. No.
What a guy.
No. So I think we just need to create a space where women can choose for themselves and decide, okay, motherhood is not for me. Not every woman has a ticking clock,
Right.
whatever that ticking clock is. Not every woman is capable of mothering.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's women with mental illness. There's women with physical illness, right? There's women with no support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason a woman chooses she doesn't want to be a mom,
Yeah.
there should be a safe space for her to not be a mom.
Right.
So, okay. Wow.
But on the flip side, even for those women who end up having a child, because there are women who have a child not out of choice,
Yes.
By circumstance.
by circumstance.
Okay, that's so
There's
underrated.
rape, there's incest, there's molestation, whatever it is.
Peer pressure from the husband.
Peer pressure,
Or the
not
marriage.
even from the husband. There's marital rape.
Yes.
There are women who are who may have decided for themselves they want 3 kids, and then the husband says, "I want 10."
Yes.
Wow.
You're the
yeah.
one who's having the children, and your body is taking the brunt of it.
Yes.
Childbirth is traumatic, and we just need to call it what it is.
Right.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not an easy process on the body. And until we create a space where a woman can say, you know what, my experience with this childbirth is not something I ever want to do again.
Right. Yeah.
And people respect that.
Yeah.
And for women, especially mother-in-laws and aunties, stop investing in other women's uteruses.
Brilliantly said.
Just stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks
Stop
for saying
asking women utazaa mwingine
Yeah.
nini, and she's not even healed from the trauma of just having a baby.
Right. Right.
That one hasn't even started walking.
Yeah.
They
Stop-
need to grow together.
yes.
That's what you're told.
There's finances that need to be considered. There's education. Do you even have a safe home to raise this child? Are you capable?
Yeah.
You could be willing, but are you capable?
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to have those conversations.
So I guess before we go on this next quick break, I think the thing that fascinates me about this conversation is for those aunties and mother-in-laws and those particular family members who put pressure on women to have kids. These are also women who have also gone out and had kids as well. So my assumption would have been that given the experience that you've had in childbirth and in raising
Exactly.
children, that there would be a level of empathy that comes with putting that
Exactly.
pressure on women to have children.
We have cognitive dissonance.
Oh my
Ah,
God.
yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And just like I said in the beginning on this show, we want for others what we don't want for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether it's a child, whether it's another woman, whether it's whoever is out there. We want for others what we don't want. We subscribe for others what we don't want for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I made the assumption that toxic motherhood stems from childhood trauma, generational.
could.
But it seems like it's more of environmental, and we are not very aware that it's just our environment. Let me read for you a very quick tweet. My baby always cries when the DM is leaving in the evening. She can't call me mom or my name, yet she knows everyone else's name. Everyone else by name. It hurts most of the time. All I did was bath this young one. The only bond we have is breastfeeding time. When we come from the break, please, I want you to really decipher this and really, is this a toxic mother or it's just environmental?
It's
And people have
environmental.
come up to her and said, so you quit your job so that you can raise your child, so that you can
Are
be
you
there.
paying for it?
Yes.
Are you
yes.
paying for it?
And people have really,
Yeah.
they've really,
Yeah.
and
We
called her
harass.
even toxic.
Yeah, we harass people.
Yeah, yeah. So before we actually get into that, I'd love to see what the socials are saying. If there's a comment that we can read before we go on this break.
This Bible verse really triggered a lot of people.
Yeah, I do.
I don't know. Let me read this one first. There are several triggers. I beg to disagree with our guest in black and white. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Jesus also had to unleash violence on the Pharisees, transact his business in the synagogue to descend of them with kicks and blows.
Okay, wow.
It was violent.
But this reminds me of a conversation that we had before where interpretation is relative. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So we'll all take something from it and interpret differently.
Have you heard what Barbara has said from the listener on social media? And remember when I told you, when they hear spare, it's beating the child senseless.
Right.
Kicks and blows.
Yeah, and you looked at me like, are you you've seen for yourself.
Yeah, I've seen. Now, we do have to take a really small break, but as soon as we get back, our phone lines are going to be officially open. So this is your opportunity to give us a call and share your insights. If there's something that you want to rebut or something that you don't agree with, or on the contrary, if you agree with everything that's been said, give us a call. As soon as we cross over into the top of the hour, I'm going to be giving you the number to call to join in on the conversation. Now, I want you to promise me that you will not go anywhere because we still have a lot more questions for our guest and a lot more conversation to be had. We are the adults in the room. We have a very esteemed guest in the building. We have Joan Mwangi, who is a master life coach, who is here to shed some light on toxic motherhood. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, Barbara.
When we started the conversation in the previous hour, Joanne talked about and listed what toxic behavior or toxic mother is. Now, if I can relate to myself and my life, I come from an environment or an African society where we used to be looked in a certain way.
Yes, this is that one look where you know
that look. You know that look. You have a lunje mother. And
Yes.
There's a look, and as some African parents have it.
Yeah.
Now, would we consider that a toxic behavior?
I don't think so. I really, honestly, at least my mom used to have the look as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of time that look is used in public.
Yes.
Oh,
'Cause she-
yeah.
So that you don't misbehave
Yes.
or you don't do this.
She can see that you're heading to destruction or you're going to do something that
or
is
you're going to
harmful,
embarrass.
or
The whole
perceived embarrassment,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because it's not necessarily embarrassing. It's perceived embarrassment.
Yes.
What are people going to say
Right.
about my child?
About me.
About me because my child is behaving
yes.
like this.
Yeah.
So I think that look was just to warn you. One, a lot of times if you're in somebody's house, don't go touching people's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's not a good moment of correction at that point.
Yeah.
Because if you've broken somebody's something,
Then
There's
it's
no
a good-
correction.
It's
Yeah.
broken. It's done. It's done.
so the look would correct you before you even do it.
I see.
So I personally wouldn't call it toxic.
So would call it maybe it's some level of correction.
it's a warning.
Okay.
It's
It's a warning, and there's nothing wrong
And
with
there's
that.
nothing wrong with warning. It's the same way you tell a child, don't touch that.
Yeah.
Don't touch that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only this time it's a look.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know there's likely many people listening who are saying to themselves, okay, if let's say, for example, beating my child would be considered as something that can be traumatic, how do I then go about actually parenting my child in a way that isn't traumatic but still gets the point across?
Again, it depends on the child. Because you might have 3, 4, 5 different children in the house and each child needs something different.
Right, a different level of attention
Yeah,
or a different
yeah.
approach.
But then again, I also want to say this about parenting. There is a level of privilege that those of us who are able to have this conversation, who are able to work on ourselves, have
Right.
that many women out there don't have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we have to be considerate of that as well. So if you look at the lady who Karigo was talking about,
Yeah.
who has to go to work, has a baby, who's left with a house help, and she all she knows is the house help because mom is probably gone from 5 a.m., comes back at 7 p.m. because of traffic and travel.
Yes.
This is a person who, I don't know whether she's a single mom, but I'm going to assume she's a single mom,
Yes.
maybe.
Yes.
She has no other options.
Yeah.
She has to feed her child, so she has to be away from home.
Yeah.
And our support system
And,
is
so-
only
and
that
there's
nanny.
and there's no support system except the nanny.
Yeah.
Yes.
How does that become toxic?
Right.
Exactly.
How is that toxic? She's doing what she can, and we have to compartmentalize human beings.
Right.
It is possible to be an amazing human being, but also be harmful to somebody somewhere.
Right. Right. It's kind of like that saying where they say you are the villain in somebody's story.
Yes.
Yes.
You can never be the hero in everybody's story. At
Yeah.
some point,
Yes.
you're going to be the villain in somebody's story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So there has to be a level of compassion. And for those mothers who are out there being labeled as toxic, I know for a fact that there's a very small percentage of human beings that wake up with an intention of harming another human being.
Right. Do you actually believe people?
Sorry, say that again.
Yes, yes.
People-
There's a very
Yeah.
small percentage of human beings in this world
Yeah.
who wake up with an intention of harming another human being.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the sociopaths and the
Yes.
psychopaths
Yes.
and
The
those
cyber
ones.
bullies.
Those ones. Even cyber bullies, I it's debatable.
Yeah.
Because usually it's a trigger
Yeah.
that makes somebody become a keyboard warrior.
Yeah, that's
You've been
true.
triggered, you're responding, you're reacting,
Right.
whatever you felt.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a person who wakes up in the morning and says, today,
you.
I will just tandika my child for whatever reason,
Senselessly.
you are a sociopath
Yeah.
of some sorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parents don't wake up with that intention in life.
Yeah.
And okay, now I want to switch gears a bit.
Okay.
We've been focusing on the kids.
Yes.
Now let's focus on adult children
Yes.
with parents.
Yes. Us now.
Us now. Us in the room.
Yes.
This is where a lot of things become thick.
Right.
So I want to paint you a picture.
Okay.
I have a friend who's grown up in a very good home. Seen the mom and the dad loving. Like, in fact, she told me like about 2-3 months ago, she's never seen her parents fight. She was even like, I wonder if these guys fight. I'm like, of course they fight. Everybody
Yeah.
fights, but
Yeah.
they've chosen to protect you.
Yeah.
And we are age mates. We're in our 30s. But she's told me that in the past 10 years, she's been in so much conflict with her mom. A lot of conflict. And when they were growing up, they were besties. But now as an adult, they are constantly fighting with their mother. This is now the flip side.
Yes.
She's a single mom raising 2 babies. And the support system has been the family. But she's always telling me, Karigo, I feel like my mother resents me. I feel like my mother resents me. And I feel like my mother really, really resents me. And the way she behaves towards me, her reactions, our conversations, they end up hurting me. They cause harm. And every time I want to, the thought of going to see her makes me feel sick. Because I know, liwalo, we
We'll
will
fight.
fight. Is this a toxic parent?
It could be. It could be. And because I don't know where, at
Definitely.
what point
Yeah.
it switched from them being besties to them being in this
Yeah.
clashing relationship.
Yes.
I think a lot of us as adults, especially when there's a parent, a mother-daughter relationship where you're extremely close,
Yeah.
there are no healthy boundaries
Right.
when you're the child. There's power.
Ah. Okay.
And the minute you start choosing what you want for yourself, it is received as rejection by the parent.
I see.
And the clashing begins.
Right.
And therefore, there's that constant back and forth.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, again, with the whole investment on other people's uteruses, our mothers naturally
I invested.
are invested in us
uterus.
having our children
Yeah.
and them being involved in a certain way with our children. And therefore, unless your mother has healthy boundaries with herself,
Yeah.
not just with you, because to have healthy boundaries, you have to have healthy boundaries as an individual before you can practice them or receive them from somebody else.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say no to a certain thing,
Yeah.
maybe your mother is telling you, you're raising this child,
Yeah.
you're not doing this right.
Yeah.
And you think the opposite.
And you think the opposite.
You're thinking, you're old, I'm young, what are you telling me?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
also it might not even be wrong or right. It could be
Yeah.
just environment.
Right.
Like the way I raise my child in the US is not the same way I would raise her if I was here, because the environment is completely different.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Right?
Yes.
Things that people would look at here as permissive are absolutely necessary there
Yeah.
for her survival.
Yeah. So then what does toxicity in an adult parent look like?
It looks like lack of boundaries. It looks like control.
Control, like, where are you? I want you now. No.
Exactly. Or if you say, Mom, I'm not coming for Sunday dinner.
Yes.
She gets pissed off. She wants you to drop what you're doing to go help her, yet you have your own family.
Yes.
That is can be considered toxic.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Would we say that some of the scenarios that are happening in our adult life or in adult children would cause a mother to be toxic? Let me give an example. Allow me to use the example of not that scenario like Rodrigo. I've had some of my friends say, my mother resents me because I'm a single mother. I would had some people would say my mother resented me because I married a lady from a different tribe or locality. So now we have differences. My mother resents me because I am not married, and I'm of a certain age. And there are many different things that happen within our adult life. Would you say that contributes to
The
the
toxicity.
toxicity in some parents in our today's life?
It's possible. It's possible. And again, it all boils down to emotional intelligence and how much a parent is invested in this child's life. Because you're a parent.
Yes.
You have a picture of what you want your daughter to be when she grows up.
Yes.
You have an idea of what kind of human being she's going to
And
be.
I'm investing in her
And
now.
you're investing body, mind, and soul
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
And then the day she comes back and she's like, listen, I don't want to go to med school. I want to be an acrobat or something. But you are like, absolutely no child of mine is ever
It
going to be
breaks me.
that. It breaks you. And instead of you sitting there and looking for a way to support that, because that's what's going to make her happy, it's not about you.
Wow.
It's what's going to make
Really
that
need to
child
say that
happy.
again. Please. You
It's
need
not
to say
about
that.
what it's not about what the child does to make you happy. It's about that child doing what makes them happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And them choose. You have to trust that you have raised them well enough to make their own decisions, to make themselves happy.
That's true. Now, if I find myself in such an incident, I'm an adult child, and the relationship between my mother and I is strained or is toxic, how best can I go about it to resolve that? Because I know it's her, it's not me.
Yes.
Because we started by saying that the moment you find there's some level of toxicity, it emanates back to the parent. So now I'm an adult child. It's not a youngling who's a minor. How do I resolve or just try and make amends so that we can go to the right path?
Sometimes again, it's always going to depend if your parent is willing to even have this candid conversation.
Right.
To hear you. Because a lot of times as parents, like for me, my daughter is 27. It's been excruciating for her to come tell me, you did XYZ and it hurt me.
Wow.
Without me reacting, not
Yeah.
responding,
Yeah.
reacting. Because it takes a level of self-control and self-awareness to hear that you have hurt and harmed somebody else and not shift blame to what they did at that moment.
Kwanzaa, if it's your child.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes a level of acceptance. It
Yeah.
takes a level of self-compassion to just say, I didn't know better.
Right.
Or this is what I knew. I am sorry. I'm going to do better. A lot of parents don't have that in them.
Right. Right.
And therefore, these relationships are forever going to be toxic.
Yeah.
Because we come from a place where we are the parent.
Yes.
We are hierarchy.
Yes.
I'm right, you're always wrong.
Yes, the parent is always right.
Yeah.
Authority is always right.
Yeah.
And there's no dialogue. First of all, you didn't even grow up in a home where there was dialogue from the get-go. Yes, it was punishment. When you spoke up your mind, you were punished.
Yeah.
You
So
were there
now
to be
you're
seen.
speaking up as an adult. Who do you think you are?
You've become very disrespectful. This
Yes.
money, this job.
Yeah, yeah. Are there ever situations where, at least from your experiences and maybe the people, the different clients that you've worked with, where having such a candid conversation just isn't possible, and the only solution for, let's say, the grown child in this situation is either to accept the reality of this situation and come to terms with the fact that maybe I'll never have an evolving relationship with my mother.
Yeah.
How do you sort of tackle those difficult moments where you can see, you know what, it's clear that people just don't want to come to the table and have this conversation?
A lot of times it's just for you as the person who is on the receiving end to make a decision as to how you want to interact with mother, father, whoever it is that's on the toxic side, right? It may mean not spending too much time with them. It may mean, I had a client whereby her mom would call and she would get a panic attack because she knew what was coming.
Yeah.
So the solution was, don't answer the phone. Don't answer the phone. Let it go to voicemail. Call her when you're in a state where you can control the conversation, where you are not
charge.
anxious to be able to have this conversation. So it really depends on the level.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense. So, ladies and gentlemen, the number to call is 0719-012-600 if you have a question for our guest in the building, anything to do with toxic parenting. Maybe you are a parent or you're a soon-to-be parent, and like many first-time parents, this is sort of stepping into uncharted waters, particularly if you are a mother, because a lot of the process of not just child birth, but also child raising does fall on our women. So if you have a question for our guest and you're just unsure about how to approach this new phase of life, the number to call is 0719-012-600. Now, we are going to take a quick break, but Rihanna and Justin Timberlake are going to keep you busy in the meantime. Don't go anywhere. We are the adults in the room. Adults in the room. We have a very special guest in the building. We have Joan Mwangi, who is a master life coach, here to talk to us about toxic motherhood. Now, Karika, when we were on the break, you asked our guest a very interesting question, which I would love for you to repeat, because I think I really liked the response that you got from that question.
So, before we went on the break, and she clarified to you that sometimes when it's all like, you asked now what happens if the parent is not willing to come to have this conversation and maybe do therapy, or now we start talking to make amends, reconciliation. And I was like, so now, you come to a place whereby you realize, I'll never get that from my mom. Like, I'll never get that. And you're an adult. And it's part of adulting where you come to terms with the reality of life.
Yeah.
And the question that I asked was, is this when now we should begin the journey of reparenting, or does the journey of reparenting begin before? And what is reparenting? Just for anybody who doesn't know.
So, reparenting is pretty much giving yourself. So when a child is born, they need certain things from a parent. If your parent is not equipped or capable or willing to parent you the way you need to be parented as a human being, the journey of reparenting is you learning to give yourself the things that your parents were not able to give you, which is what I do with healing the inner child. It is a reparenting class.
Wow.
So you learn what emotions you need to soothe for yourself.
Yeah.
You learn how to feel your emotions. You learn how to identify your emotions. So if your parent is not willing or capable of giving you something that you need,
all hope is not lost.
all hope is not lost. As an adult, you can learn to give yourself those things so that you're not forever looking for validation or looking for something from somebody who is incapable of giving it to you.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think even coming to that realization as an adult, saying that I was raised in a particular environment, I experienced certain trauma, and now the responsibility falls on me to sort through this, because clearly this particular parent, particularly if it's like a mother, for example, isn't able to give me that. How does well, I can imagine firstly that must be a very difficult conversation to have with somebody who might be looking for that validation and that healing from this person. But how does one then start, I guess, taking the necessary steps to take responsibility for now my life? Because that's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
It is. And number one, the one thing, first of all, you need to know for a fact is that the person who harmed you cannot heal you.
Hey, you're preaching
That's true.
today.
The person who harmed you cannot heal you.
Right.
Therefore, there's a part of the class I recommend my students, if you had, say, the toxic mom or the toxic dad or no parents, there's always women and men in your lives who can fill that gap.
Yeah.
They may not be acting as a parent, but we have community. Create community where you can get those things from people who are willing and capable.
Right.
It could be your friend. It could be an aunt. It could be somebody in your neighborhood. It could be somebody in your church.
Right.
It doesn't have to come from your mother. The more you ask a person who is incapable or unwilling to soothe you or to parent you or to acknowledge that they even harmed you, the more harm they create, because
see.
it just becomes a tug of war,
I
because
see.
they don't see it from that perspective
Right.
unless they've actually done the work.
Yeah. So I think, I guess that in comparison to those who have maybe mothers or parents in their life who are willing to come to the table, that process obviously is going to look very, very different. So given the fact that you say the people who harm you cannot heal you, why do you think we seek that healing from this person? Why do you think someone might come to you and say, I have a very tumultuous relationship with my mother and it's been like this for X number of years and I want to address it? Why do you think people then come to you if like under the premise that the person who hurt you can't heal you? What is it that you think people look for from that person?
You're still looking for, because when you're born, okay, so there's three parts to us. There's the child self, which is the container for all our emotions. There's the adolescent self, who is where your ego resides. And we live in a space of everything is like worst case scenario, like it's just crazy.
Right.
You have hormones raging when you're in that chronological age, right? And that is a space most of us never leave, to our adult self. Our adult self looks at life from the perspective of truth and fact and looks at what is happening present moment. Doesn't look at what happened in the past to bring it to present moment, and doesn't imagine things that are going to happen in the future and bring it to the present moment.
Right.
Now, when you're operating from your adolescent self or your child self, you're looking for something to be validated.
Right.
And if you didn't get that thing from your parent, you're still hoping that if you self-abandon or concoct yourself into this person, your parent will love you the way you need to be loved.
Right.
But if they're incapable, unwilling, or willing but cannot, for whatever reason,
Right.
they're not going to do it. So you have to find ways to just practice self-love. And self-love is not going to the salon and makeup and all those things.
Yeah.
It's truly sitting with yourself, feeling your emotions and accepting yourself wholeheartedly the way you are.
Yeah.
Radical self-acceptance is what we call it.
Right. Radical self-acceptance.
Yes. I have some faults here, but I am amazing here, and that's okay.
Right.
Joan, I have a question from one of the listeners, and the gentleman is asking, if you find you have a defiant child, and you've said that some of these problems or issues emanate from the parent, how would her parent resolve that?
I would say, first of all, the parent would need to figure out what is it that they're doing that is creating this defiance.
Right.
So a lot of times, like you guys were talking about alcoholism and all these things that parents do.
Yeah.
If you're an alcoholic parent, you're definitely not being able to parent.
Right.
right? If you're a traumatized parent, or if you're sick, maybe, you have a critical illness or a long-term illness or whatever, you're not able to parent the right way.
Yes.
If you abandon your children, you're never home, this acting up of this child could be a result of that. So are you a present parent? Are you a present parent? I think that's the first place to start. Are you present?
Presence.
Because you could be there
Yeah, but
physically,
you're not
but you're
present.
not present. You're
Yeah.
on your phone, you're watching sports, you're doing something else other than paying attention to that child.
Right.
Kwanza, and let me just say this for every listener, and correct me if I'm wrong. Growing up in my generation, I don't know about the
My
generation. My generation, like 30s and above. Yeah, 30s and above. I don't know about the 20 guys, but the 30, 40, 50s. Presence of a parent was dictated by providing. They've paid school fees. They've made sure you're not hungry. They visited you maybe if they had time, they would visit you in school. But presence was dictated by my father paid school fees. My mother took me to school and they were there. But if you wanted to communicate your feelings, no one was there to communicate to.
And
But presence was dictated as provision. And if you'd communicate to a parent and be like, you are never there, they'd be like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But I took care of you. But what would you tell such an adult child? When we come back.
When we come back.
Yes.
When we come back.
Yes,
When
when
we
we
come
come back.
back.
Definitely hold that thought. I can see all the callers trying to get through. As soon as we come back from this break, we're going to be endeavoring to answer your calls. Remember, the number to call is 0719 012 600 to join in on the conversation and ask our guest your important question. Do not go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We are the adults in the room. Very close relationship with my mom, like very, very close.
Are you a mama's boy?
I wouldn't call myself a mama's boy, no. Because I mean, how do you define a mama's boy?
You're enmeshed.
Thank you.
Oh, thank God we have an expert. Because I was like, I don't know.
Right?
Are you?
I don't think so. No,
Please define that.
So enmeshment is what is we see to the naked eye as closeness,
right,
as a close-knit family.
Right.
I'm really close with my mom, but you're all up in each other's businesses. There's no
boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
there's no
How many
where
times do you
you
call your
end
mom?
and where I start.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. Your mom is in your bedroom doing stuff.
kitchen, in the laundry,
kitchen,
yeah.
telling your wife how to cook for you.
Right.
Telling your
Arnold
children.
does not
Yeah.
like that fish like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
My son, this is how it's supposed to be cooked. This is how
Right.
my son eats.
Right.
Yes. That's
No,
right.
I can't marry such a man.
by
I'll
definition
die.
of
You
that,
never know them until you get in there.
Yeah.
But you can read the red flags in the dating.
Majority
when
of
you're dating.
women who are married to men who are baby what?
Mama's
Mama's
boys.
boy, pardon me. They come to realize, like, in between the relationship, because also men try to protect these women or their girlfriends from their mothers. They know their mothers,
right,
and they know the extent. So even them, they know they can't get women because of their mothers.
right.
Or
Yeah.
you come from what we call a codependent family, and your self-worth is based on doing for others. It's very unconscious. And therefore, when you meet a man who is enmeshed with his mother,
Yes.
because enmeshment looks like being helpful, being together as a family. You're like, oh my God, this is so good.
Mommy love. This is the mommy
Yes.
love I'm looking for.
Yes.
Then she becomes a monster in love.
Yes.
Yes. Or is it in love?
Right. No, but I think based on that
Wow.
definition, I
Are
definitely
you a
wouldn't.
mama's boy?
No,
You wouldn't agree
no,
if he was.
I don't
no.
know
No, I
Mari
think-
is. I don't really think you are either.
Yeah,
because
because-
you're very, very independent.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I think I keep very healthy boundaries because at the end of the day, I'm a grown adult.
Yes.
You know,
I know the word you wanted to use.
I know, but you remember he was on radio. Then
Yes.
Hey,
Do you have a beep?
someone beeped on his ear.
I am very much an adult, so there's naturally there's a gap that I have to create by virtue of the fact that I have my own life. I mean, even when I was married, during that process, I kept a very healthy distance between the relationship I shared with my mum or my family to that I shared with my wife at the time. So it's I wouldn't based on that description, I wouldn't call myself a mama's boy. No, but then you're right in saying there definitely are some people out there who can't move, can't make decisions, can't stand on your own 2 feet without the mother's input.
I can't imagine marrying. Okay,
And there are women who are like that too.
Yes,
really?
Their mothers.
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yes, girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you see that actually playing out there in reality? Because I can understand it from a
Where
male's
the-
perspective,
Yeah.
but from the perspective of a
the
woman
female.
being very enmeshed with her mother.
With her mother, it's just literally you will feel like you're in a relationship with two women. You're competing.
Right.
Mom said that we don't need to do that. I
Yeah,
was talking to mom the other
mom
day.
actually bought us a house next door.
Yo.
She's going to help us
Mom
raise
has
the
a-
kids.
Mom was talking to someone else and she's telling me that environment you want to buy that property, it's not good. You know, I was talking to mom about this. I passed by mom's house.
Oh my
I'm going to
goodness.
visit my mom.
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
god.
Yes, and the men who can testify.
Creepy.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's.
Very good. You're laughing like you're one of those people who do those things.
Hey,
Are you
this one
serious?
never.
Mom,
If a woman tells you her mom is her best friend,
Be
run.
weary.
Yes.
beware.
You know me, I've grown up away from home since the age of 22.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with being friends with your parents.
Exactly.
However, as an adult, your parents become consultants
Yeah.
and cease being parents, and they're not your best friend.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's important to know that. It's important to know that distinction
Yeah.
because
Wow.
you can have your best friend who you will go to and maybe share certain parts of your life
Yeah.
or seek advice.
Yeah.
But then going to your mum for that same advice may not always be, let me say, the best outcome.
Men, be open.
But I'd
Women,
love to see
stay
what the socials.
dangerous.
I'd love to see what the socials are saying. What are you saying, Barbara?
Zachary Gikonya says, hi guys, special regards to our studio guest, Joan Mwangi. A very good discussion you're having today. Now, our mothers used to have many, many children and there was no time to pamper anyone. You had to toe all the rules without much supervision, failure to which you were ruthlessly dealt with. You had to literally learn to fight for your space and scramble for everything while still observe the highest discipline. This molded us into fairly reasonable human beings who embrace life with rationale. Unfortunately, we have christened our mothers to being toxic. The opposite is true. We are having 1 or 2 kids of whom we overly love. We treat them as fragile eggs. We respond quickly to their needs. We pamper their strange egos and we seek to prove them that the entire universe revolves around them. The end result is that what we are witnessing now. Children who are engaged in wanton destruction of property as they dictate when to attend school and when not to. Very toxic kids. Anyway, I feel like crying and throwing myself on the ground. Mumbi, please play for me Luther Vandross, the Christmas song.
Luther Vandross.
Maybe
Okay.
I even
Christmas
requested
song.
for that song.
Yes, yeah. You're in alignment. I like what he's saying. Yeah, many of us were raised in such a scenario where our parents you're talking about resources. They were many and they had to work with what they have. They were not only babying us or being responsible for us, but also for our own fathers and our own relatives. Now, the opposite is true. Some of
Yeah.
us are really overdoing it when we were children. We want to do better than what our parents. We want to unlearn. If I was stroked or caned, I don't want to do that. Where do you draw the
Draw the
balance
line.
when it comes to that?
Again, it's structure, it's discipline, and not discipline as in violence. Discipline. And talking about consequences. For
Do you believe
example,
in physical correction?
personally, I don't. My child has never been physically corrected.
Never.
Never.
Wow.
But
Veterans are surviving.
I don't tell people what to do. I just ask that question over and over. If you do not want it for yourself,
Never been
why
pinched-
do you
pinched?
want it? I've never pinched her. Maybe she was
Maybe-
pinched by her shosho. I don't know. But, but then in terms of how you're raising your children now, or how we are raising this new generation, a lot of us also went to the opposite side where we don't even have boundaries with ourselves.
Right. Right.
So how are we even supposed to be parents with these children? and all we know is violence. Nobody talked to us. Nobody, like, we are traumatized humans trying to raise healthy children.
Which is not
And that's something, by the way, Joan, I always like try to reconcile with. We are traumatized sometimes as a generation, as a society.
And we say we turned out fine.
And
And
then-
Nilichapwa, but I'm
Yeah,
fine.
and then now you
that's our
Yeah.
go-to statement.
and then now you want to raise other kids in that trauma that you experienced. You've not healed, you've not acknowledged.
And I want to say something about what he said about children who do not have respect for property.
Right.
Let's just look at the adults in this world and the respect they have for property. Who are these kids
Learning from.
from?
From the people around them.
Yeah, from the people around them. When we strike, we go. When we have sports, let's just use sports.
Yeah.
There's no oppression or anything, but there's hooliganism.
Right.
Gor Mahia and AFC.
Yeah.
Right.
Or Arsenal and whoever.
And
Yeah.
Manchester.
They go just destroy people's property.
But then you're so right.
So why is it that we as adults can go destroy property, but when children are oppressed and the only avenue they have is to ban a building? I'm not saying it's right, so don't start coming at me saying I'm saying that it should
Advocating
be.
for it, yeah.
No, I'm not advocating
That's
for
what
it.
we see.
But in life, you cannot ignore fire.
Yes. Yes.
You can ignore somebody talking, you can ignore tears, you can ignore feelings. You cannot ignore fire.
Yes.
And these schools have been burning since the 1900s.
Oh, yeah.
This is not new.
Yeah.
Look at the history of Kenya.
Right.
Schools have been burning. And the same parents, because the children who are burning schools are children of people my age
Right.
Yeah.
or your age.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about the things you guys did.
It's true.
When you were in school.
Yep.
And how this
Some of them-
gets passed
Some
on.
of them.
Some of
Yep.
them actually burnt institutions.
Some of
Some
them-
rioted in universities.
All the
They
time.
were looting on some streets in Kenya, on Uhuru Highway, and taking chips and chicken and destroying glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I come from a generation where there's a school that even burnt the boys.
Yeah.
The schools,
The dormitory.
Yes.
Hold that thought, ladies.
not new.
Hold that thought. As soon as we come back from this break, we're going to get more into the conversation, particularly around this. And, as the show goes on, I want to encourage you to give us a call. The number to call is 0719 012 to join in on the conversation. We won't just be sampling your views via our social media handles, but also via our telephone service. So make sure you give us a call and ask any questions that you might have on toxic motherhood. Do not go anywhere. We are the adults in the room. We have a very special guest in the building who's been shedding some very interesting light on toxic motherhood. We have Joan Mwangi, who is a master life coach, but you focus quite specifically on healing the inner child. And I can see, as we've spoken, the connection between needing to heal the inner child and also how that can affect you as you become a parent, as you grow. Now, I'd love to see what Boniface is saying. Let's hear from him. Hello, Boniface.
Hey.
How are you, sir?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. It's good to hear from you. I hope you're well. Are you there? Hello. Please give us a
Hello?
call back. We're having a bit of issues with the. Oh, are you there? Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes. Please continue.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fine. How is everyone in the room?
We're doing well. We're doing well.
Well.
We're good.
Boniface, please proceed.
I think he's having some issues with his line. Boniface, please give us a call back. The number to call is 0719012600. Alternatively, you can jump on our social media handles at SpiceFM KE on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and you can ask your question there. So I do have a question for you before we look to wrap up the show. I want to focus a little bit on some of the outcomes that can come from toxic parenting. Are you able to shed some light on what some of those outcomes might actually look like?
One of the common ones is repeated behavior. You repeat what you experienced
Right.
from your toxic parent. Another one is the total opposite, where you're not able to function in society as a healthy being, because everything that you experience, or majority of your experiences, so like especially with women, if you have a toxic mother, chances are in the workplace, certain people will trigger you because their behaviors or their mannerisms are like your mother's.
Right. Interesting.
Or people that you experience. There will be relationships that are not healthy with other women. Right? So it truly, a lot of these things are very circumstantial,
Right.
but a lot of times it's repeated behavior because you repeat what was
You've
done to
seen.
you or
Yes.
what was modeled for you
Yeah.
in your environment.
Oh, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, look, we do almost have to wrap up the show, but I know you mentioned earlier that you have a few different courses and
Yep.
service offerings. I'd love to learn a little bit about that. And for those that might be interested in learning more about your services, how they can get in contact with you.
Okay. So I have 2 classes that I offer. One is Boundaries Masterclass, because if you don't have boundaries, you literally are functioning in a very dysfunctional way.
Right.
Right. So it's a 6-week class, and we talk about setting boundaries, but we also talk about how to respect other people's boundaries,
Right.
including children's boundaries, because we as adults assume that children don't have boundaries.
Right.
They
Or
do
they
have
they
boundaries.
shouldn't be entitled to boundaries.
Exactly. Then the other class is the Healing the Inner Child class, which is a reparenting class. It's 12 weeks long. And we go through every stage of a child's life up to adulthood, or
Right.
rather of a human being's life, from conception all the way. So we ask hard questions.
Yeah.
We dig deep into family history. We look at how you show up as a person on a day-to-day basis. And then I give you tools to manage yourself or to manage life. I am a huge proponent for therapy.
Right.
So a lot of my clients are working on themselves and based on the trauma, because I don't take every client. There are some clients I will not work with.
Right.
Like if you're an alcoholic or if you're drug addicted, this class is going to be a trigger, and
Yeah.
it could take you down the deep end.
Yep.
Right.
Because it's
Yep.
hard work.
Yep.
It is accepting things that you probably have not accepted for a long time. It is also looking at yourself and looking at the harm that you have caused other people. It's not just the harm that's been caused to you.
Right.
Because
Right.
when you're unconscious and operating from that unconscious space, you probably harming somebody else in the process. So I tell people to go for therapy because
Right.
it works.
Right.
So that class is a very good companion to therapy.
Are the classes online or physical?
It is online classes, all of them virtual. The next set starts in January. They're usually on Saturdays, just because I want to give people from around the world an opportunity to sign up.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to reach me, you can reach me on social media. On Instagram, I am joan.w.mwangi. On Facebook, it's Unearth a Conscious You.
Okay.
And I don't do Twitter. So.
Right. Okay.
Understandable.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes. So if you don't mind, could you just repeat your social handles again for those that may have missed it?
yes. It's joan.w.mwangi. That's Instagram.
Okay.
And Facebook, it's Unearth, which is unearthing. Yeah, Unearth a Conscious You. All one word.
Unearth a Conscious You.
Yes.
Right. Right.
And it's a Facebook page.
Right. Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, firstly, I want to start off by thanking you so much for making the time to come in and have this conversation.
Thank you.
Again, our show is very much about enlightening and educating, not just ourselves, but those of us that take time to actually listen on matters pertaining to adulthood. And this is definitely something that is very much a part of adulthood. Many of us will grow up and we will become parents. And when it's your first time, you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
But having resources like this and even like the course that you offer is incredibly vital to helping us grow, unlearn and relearn some of the things that we were taught. So thank you so much for making time to come in.
Thank you for having me.
We
it was
appreciate
a
you.
pleasure.
I hope you'll come back.
Yes. Now,
Invite me, I will come back.
most definitely. Most definitely. Now, to everyone who has joined, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We do have to go for the evening, but we shall be back from 7 p.m. tomorrow. Take care of yourselves and we'll see you then. Take care, ladies and gentlemen.
Spice FM.